Okay, today we're going to start. We're up to Maseches Chullin Daf of Huna. It's in the middle of the page, a little under the middle of the page on Daf Yud Amud Aleph. We thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. We should have the base of Migdash immediately. We had a machlekes before, machlekes Amirayim. The case was someone shechted, and after the shechita, he sees that the knife had a blemish in it. Question is, does that go back and ruin the shechita? So Rav Huna said that it would ruin the shechita even if after the shechita he was banging his knife on a bone, trying to chop a bone, and so you could assume that maybe the nick in the knife came from cutting the bone. Because nevertheless, you still don't know if it came earlier. Could be it came from earlier as well. Maybe it came at the beginning of the shechita. Maybe the skin on the neck of the shechita already caused that blemish. And Rav Chisda says that no, we say that it's kosher, and we say that the nick on the knife probably came from the bone that he was banging afterwards. That would be more logical. What made the nick on the knife? So Maseches Chullin Daf Rav Huna. Rav has a question which supports Rav Huna. Supports Rav Huna means that it also contradicts Rav Chisda. Presented here, it's interesting because it's presented in two opposite ways. Maseches usually means that it's a question, and l'siyua means a support. Okay, so let's take a look. It says Maseches Chullin Daf Rav Huna, Taval va'olav v'nimtzalav davar chaytetz. Someone goes to the mikveh, comes out of the mikveh, and he sees that he has on him something that's a chatzitza. I don't know, some dirt, something that's sticky to something sticking on him. Some grime. Even though after he went to the mikveh. What was he doing after the mikveh? He was fixing his car or something after the mikveh, and he sees some black schmutz on him after when he's done. He says, "Ay, where did this come from?" He's going to assume it came from afterwards, right? Because that's when he was busy with the the grease from from the engine or whatever. The Brisa says that it's not a good tefillah unless he's able to say that it was definitely not on me before, then it's not a good tefillah. We can assume that maybe it came later. It's not enough. That assumption's not enough. Just like according to Rav Huna, you could assume that maybe the nick in the knife came later, but that's not enough. It could be it came from before also. But over here, the Vadai Taval, he definitely went to the mikveh. Safek Havi Allah, Safek Lo Yavi Allah. Because Asi Safek Umaitzi Midei Vadai. Look at what's going on. You have a Safek if it was back then. And nevertheless, we say that it's no good. So Raya to Rav Huna. It's a kasha and Rav Chisda. The Gemara says, Shani Hasam, Diklameimar Hemet Tamel Chaskasei Ve'emalei Taval. No, you have to think about it like this. The person before he went to the mikveh was a tamei. Person, why is he going to the mikveh? Because it was tamei. So now you want to change his status. You want to change his status and say he went to the mikveh and now he's not tamei. But there's a problem because maybe the grime that he finds after the mikveh was there beforehand. So then we have a chazaka that he was tamei. You're trying to remove the chazaka. You're trying to remove the chazaka that you can't do unless you have a vadai. And we're trying to contrast this to the shechita. The shechita was a good shechita. You're trying to tell me that there was no shechita because the knife was blemished, but the shechita was, you did the shechita already, it was good. The Gemara says, 1 second. No. The same way that you have a problem with the tamei, that you say that he was tamei before, and you're trying to change the status. Trying to change the status to say that now he's tar based on a mikveh that you don't know if it was good. So Hanami by the shechita as well. Hamid behema al cheskas re'emalei nishchita. The behema has a status that it doesn't have a shechita. Why? What was before the shechita? The animal was alive. So the animal was alive before the shechita. So now you're trying to say that the shechita changed the status, but you don't know if the shechita was a good shechita. So just like by the mikveh, you don't know if the mikveh was a good mikveh because maybe it had a chatzitza. So to the shechita, you don't know if the shechita was good, and you have a chazaka before that it wasn't shechted. Gemara says, how can you say that you're going to put it on its old chazaka that it wasn't shechted? You take a look at it right now; it's shechted. Or yishchut lefanecha. You have a contradiction to the old chazaka right here. You see that it's shechted. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, we see that he went to the mikveh. You want to put him on his old status that he was tamei before, but we see that he went to the mikveh. It says, but the mikveh maybe wasn't good because maybe he had the grime on him, the chatzitza. So hachinami yasyal b'reisa. But by the shechita, it's also not good. Take a look. The knife maybe had the nick in it. Gemara answer is very interesting. Basically, what we're holding right here is that we really should say that just like the tefillah is not a good tefillah because we have a reyesa, that maybe the grime that he has on him now, which was something that he was involved with now, maybe was there earlier, pre-existed. So too by the shechita, we could say that even though he was cutting bones after the shechita, maybe the nick on the knife pre-existed beforehand. And the comparison is pretty clear.
Isn't he chayav to check the knife?
He checked the knife before. Shaila is, when he checks the knife after, he finds that there was a nick in it. Now, which part of the shechita did it come? Rav Huna says it came at the beginning, and Rav Chizda says it came totally afterwards. Totally afterwards, you were using the knife for something else. Okay, so Gemara says like this: by the knife of the shechita, it's a kasha on Rav Chizda. Yeah, it's a kasha on Rav Chizda because Rav Chizda would say it's a raya to Rav Huna. I'm on Yud. It's a raya to Rav Huna. Yudam and Aleph. We are on Yudam and Aleph. It's like 8 lines from the bottom.
This keeps on.
So Rav Huna is the one that says that I can't say that it's a good shechita, and this brisa about the tefillah is also doing the same thing. You can't say it's a good tefillah because afterwards you find that there's something wrong. So the kasha on Rav Chizda would say that the tefillah should be good and the shechita should also be good because beforehand you had no reason to assume that there was this issue. So comes along our Gemara and says, 1 second, sakin Isra'ai, behema le Isra'ai. See what's going on now, saying that the person that went to the mikveh, we have a problem with his tefillah because we looked at him now, we see he has a chatzitza. So there's a reyesa in his tefillah because right now we don't know if this was there beforehand. When it comes to the animal, I don't look at the animal and say, look, there's something wrong with the animal now. Maybe that this problem was there beforehand. I have a problem with the knife, not with the animal. So because it's one step removed, so the reyes of the sakin is not going to take away from the vaday good shechita. Or it's not going to take away from the vaday that the etzim is pagan. That's how Rashi puts it. Yeah. So that how far removed the reyes is going to make a difference here. Okay. Meisrei, we have another question. Shachar asaveshet achkach nishpatar gageres. The veshet is the trachea, right? And the gargeres is the esophagus, right? Gargeres is the trachea, which is the food. The trachea is esophagus, and the veshet is the breathing.
Veshet is the esophagus.
Okay. So shachar as veshet. He shechted the esophagus. And then the trachea is dislodged.
So he's going backwards.
The trachea is on the outside, on the front. Or so it's over there. It says kshera. Because why? We're talking about a bird now. In the bird, you only have to shecht one siman. By an animal, you have to shecht majority of both. By a bird, you only have to shecht the majority of one, either the esophagus or the trachea. So here he shechted the esophagus. How let's say the trachea was dislodged. It was popped out of its location, and from where it's attached to. And then he did the shechita. Then it's psula. It was already a puzzle before. It was already a problem before he did the shechita. What happens if he did the shechita, and afterwards he takes a look, he sees that the gargeris is dislodged. If it was dislodged afterwards, then it's kosher. If it was dislodged before, then it's puzzle. This was a story. They said, Kol safek b'shchita is puzzle. Whenever you have a safek, puzzle. Kol safek b'shchita lasa yimai. What are you trying to tell me when you say that rule, Kol safek b'shchita? What halacha are you trying to include when you said all sveikas by shchita? Probably, you know what you're trying to include? The case of when you shechted an animal, and after the shechita you check the knife, and you see that it has a nick in it. That's a suffix in the shechita. We say it's puzzle. And probably it's also coming to tell me that even if afterwards you use the knife to cut bones, so it's a raya to Rav Huna. The raya to Rav Huna. Gemara says, "Loi, that's not what we mean by kol safek b'shchita is puzzle. Lasi is safek shah, safek taras. Coming to include something else, not a suffix in the knife, suffix in the shchita. Yeah, remember we said a reyes in the knife doesn't ruin the shchita. That was the way we gave an answer last time. Here it's only a suffix in the shchita itself. Suffix shah, suffix taras. Maybe you delayed in the middle of the shchita. Maybe you pressed down. Maishna. Why are you making this difference? Mar says exactly what we said before. Over there was a problem with the animal. Over here, there's only a problem with the knife, not a problem with the animal. Because we do make a difference between what type of suffix it is. Over there, it's a suffix in the knife. The knife has a pekam. Over here, I have a suffix if the shechita itself was done properly by pressing or not. Or actually, probably what it means, hachas hasam misyal reis bebehema means nishbetay gargeris. Probably, we have a suffix if the gargeris was dislodged before the shechita or after the shechita, so that's a suffix in the behema, in the ice. It means in the animal. So then that's a different type of suffix. Take a look at this. Hilchasa kavaseder Rav Huna kishlei shiber ba'etzem. Hilchasa kavaseder Rav Chisda kishlei ba'etzem. Take a look at Rashi. Hilchasa Rav Huna kashinan la'ar. Val yadi hayamaisa v'hayerli Rav Yaakov bar Yakar ba'if le'eser. Rashi says I had a story with this, that he shechted an animal. He shechted a bird. And after the shechita, he checked the knife. He saw that the knife had a nick in it. Said that his teacher, Rabbi Yaakov bar Yakar, said that it's also. Why? Because there's a possibility that maybe it was the skin on the neck that caused the nick. The nick came before the shechita, which means the whole shechita was no good. Which is the way Rav Huna paskins. That's only in a case where you did not, after the shechita, start breaking bones and then check the knife and see, hey, what do you know? There's a nick in it. However, let's take a drop further. But we will be lenient if after the shechita you broke bones with the knife and then you check the knife and you find that there's a nick in it. We're not going to tell you, oh, maybe the nick came from the skin. On the shechita, the beginning, maybe it goes back to then, and it's going to be possible. We don't say that. We say that it probably came from the bones. So we have like a logical halacha over here that it depends what he did after the shechita. If he didn't use the knife after the shechita to cut something that would cause a nick, then we say that maybe it came from the shechita. But if he did something after the shechita, he started to use it to chop bones, then we say that it came from afterwards. Yeah. Now the Gemara says, Michlal, if that's the way you want to divide it up, then probably the Rav Chisda Afagav, the Leishiva Be'etzim. Rav Chisda would say that it's going to be kosher. Rav Chisda himself, we're passing like Rav Chisda if afterwards you broke bones. You're going to say that it probably came from later. Why should it say it came from the shechita? You were using the knife afterwards, right? But that must mean that if we're passing like Rav Chisda, in that case, that means that Rav Chisda himself probably held even more. That even if you didn't cut bones afterwards, it's still going to be kosher. Problem is, so what did the neck come from? It had to come from the neck. It came from the neck. So then the shechita is no good. So take a look at this. Michlal der Rav Chisda Afagav Leishiv Be'etzim. El b'ma'yivkam. So how did it get a pagam? Ema be'etzim de mefareka sifkam. Maybe you did the shechita too far, and when you're doing the shechita, instead of cutting just the skin and the trachea and the esophagus, you cut all the way back and you hit the neck. Hit the neck. There's a bone in the neck. Maybe that's what caused it. That's why Rav Chisda says it's kosher. Why? Because that's the end of the shechita. You already did a full shechita. The nick came at the end. Now we don't hold that according to this v'hilchasa. We hold only if he chopped bones afterwards. Here we would say maybe it came from the front skin. Havi uvda b'taraf Rabbi Yosef ad tleisa chiyusa. Was a story, and Rabbi Yosef said what happened was they didn't do shechting on the what's it called, with the production line. Shechting. 13 animals he shechted, maybe birds, I don't know. And Yusuf probably means animals. And they checked it afterwards. They had to go back and say that all of them were treif. Come on, who was he pasking like? He must have been pasking like Rav Huna. Like Rav Huna. Rav Huna says that maybe the nick came from the front skin of the neck, right? Came from the front skin.
How many times can you do that? That's good for the first time.
See, no, he did. He checked the knife before he started. Checks 13. And he checks the knife again afterwards. Sees that there's a pagam. So he's going back and looking at all of those that he did. Somewhere along the way, it became nifkam. Where did it become nifkam? Rav Huna says it became nifkam at the very first shechita. At the front of the neck, there's a skin, and right over there at the beginning of the shechita, it became pagam. It got the neck. The Gemara says, you see, according to Rav Chisda, when did it get the neck? On the neck of the first shechita, not on the skin on the first shechita, on the back of the neck, after the shechita. Machlekes over here between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda would be: is the first shechita the pasal, or according to everyone, from the second shechita on, it's going to be a problem because you didn't use the you didn't chop bones afterwards to say it came from that. Okay, so the question is, what about the first one? So we say Kiman Rav Huna v'afilu b'kamaisa, and even the first one is going to be treif. Like Rav Chisda labar mikamaisa. It's really possible like Rav Chisda, and we think that the nick came at the end of the first shechita. Yeah, on the neck, on the back of the neck, not at the front of the neck. Once we could say labar mikamaisa means, and besides for the first one, it means the first one is not included, excluding the first one. Bar means outside. Iba Yisema Li'olam Kiravuna. Really, we could say like Rav Huna, Rav Chisda, because if it would be really, we could say it's really Rav Huna, and so they should all be treif. The Rav Chisda, because if we would say we're passing like Rav Chisda, Michti. 1 second, Mitla Talinan. We try to say that it's all kosher, right? Mimai the betzim efrekus kamaisivkum, don't betzim efrekus basraisivkum. Maybe, how do you know which one it was? According to Rav Chisda, we were being lenient the whole time. We're saying that the nick came at the very end. Maybe it was the last one. Maybe it was the 13th. Berikat Nifkam at the end of the Shechita of the 13th, right? Because the neck, the back of the back part of the Shechita, the end. The Gemara answers. The Gemara says, "Oh, that's it." Okay. So this would be that Rav Yosef is paskening like Rav Huna, because he said that they're all treif. According to Rav Chisda, we won't say that. So it looks like the halacha is over here. Amalei Rav Achabrei the Rav Rav Ashi. Rav Achabrei the Rav says to Rav Ashi, Rav Kana matzrich b'dikusa ben kol chada v'chada. Rav Kana was like the Rebbe of Rav Ashi. Rav Achabrei the Rav tells Rav Ashi what his Rebbe said. Rav Kana says Rav Kana would require a bedika between each animal. Come on, where does that go? Like Karavuna, Mifsal Kamaisa. It's going to he's passing like Ravuna. If you don't do a bedika, you're going to pass even the first one. It's like Rav Chisda Lachshure Basrai. So no, he meant like Rav Chisda, and he's only concerned about the last one that you're going to do, because always the last one is going to be puzzle. Achshure Basraisa. Why would the last one be puzzle? It would say it happened at the end of the last one. No. The Achshure Basraisa doesn't mean the last one. It means all the later ones. Now, Rav Chisda would also, what's the Gemara doing over here? Before we had a svara, and maybe according to Rav Chisda, chapter 13, to really all 13 are kosher, according to Rav Chisda. Because maybe it happened on the very last one of the third. It happened at the end of the 13th. That was our svara. Anyway, our Gemara here thinks that svara is just a rejection, and it's not really accepted. That svara. Really, Rav Chisda would make 12. Would make 12 treif. Yeah. Rashi says, "V'leslei hadam le'el." Rashi says this comment that we made before, that maybe it's the last of the last. He said that we're going to reject. We're not going to accept that. The Gemara said that. The Gemara didn't really mean that. So what's coming out now is that we're going to say that our concern is that maybe Rav Huna is going according to Rav Kana. He said that Rav Kana is going according to Rav Huna. And we want to pass even the first one. He said not necessarily. We're going like Rav Chisda, and we want to passel just the later ones, all 12. But the first one but the first one's still going to be kosher. Gemara says if Rav Kana requires that you have to check it after each shechita, then why do you have to check? Why do you have to go to the Rav to check it? It'd be very time consuming over here. In between every shechita, the Rav would have to check the knife. Says, why do you have to go to the Rav? You can trust the Sheikhet. Machlekes here, where we get Eidach and Neman Bisurin from. I have Rashi and Gittin says that Eidach and Neman Bisurim is because Maisim B'chol Yom. Because that's the way we function. That's the way the sages had to institute it in order for us to survive. How do you know that you to trust your wife in the house that the food is kosher, right, or everything? Taisvus over there says that it's because B'safrala. The Torah says that she can count when she's in need. She counts for herself. She doesn't need witnesses to testify if she stopped bleeding or not. So then we see that Eidach and Am Bisurim from the pasuk. Yeah. Anyway, whatever the case is, Eidach and Am Bisurim. Why do you have to go to the Rav? So then why do you go to the Rav at the beginning to check the knife? We had before Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Was it who said that you have to check it by the Rav? Bedikas Chacham. Where do we have Bedikas Chacham? We didn't have it before. I thought we had Bedikas Chacham.
Okay. They're saying that we've learned that elsewhere that shochet has to go.
Okay, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yochanan explained that you don't have to go to the Chacham for halachic reasons. You go to the Chacham for respect reasons. It's not. So therefore, you only go once. Afterwards, you check it on your. You can check it on your own. The checking afterwards. Okay, now we get into two topics over here. First topic is chazaka, and Daf Yud Aleph, the topic is raiv. Everyone familiar with chazaka? Chazaka is an assumed status. We go after assumptions based on to the status that it used to be. The Gemara asks now, Minaha milsa damar abanan uki milsa achazaka achazke. What's the source that the rabbi said that you leave something on its assumed status? Amr Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amr Yonasan. Shmuel bar Nachmani says the name of Rabbi Yonasan. Amr Krav Yatza Kain min Abayas, Al Pesach Abayas, Viskes Abayas Shivas Yamin. Talking about tzaras, yeah, and we're talking about tzaras on the house. So what happens is the kohen, he leaves the house, and then he says, and then he closes the door. He says that it has to be closed off for 1 week. Now it's very possible. Dilma adenafik va'asa batzalei shira. Maybe as he's leaving, the nega's shrinking. What happens if it shrinks? So if the nega isn't, all the halachas of this house are going to be because there is the size of a nega, the size of tzaras there, the size of a gris is on the wall. But let's say that as he's leaving the house, the nega shrinks. He can't see it, right? It's disappearing as he's leaving. That means all the halachas of this house really don't apply because there's really no tzaras there. Maybe it shrunk as right when he was leaving. Batzal shira elalav. Why don't we assume that? Say that we put it on its chazaka. Didn't shrink before we left. Probably still there. Yeah, makes sense. Leave it on its assumed status. But that's the way it was. Maskefla Ravacha Bar Yaakov. Ravacha Bar Yaakov has a question. How do you know that we put something on its assumed status based on the fact that when he leaves the house, you don't know if it just immediately shrunk? So, since you don't know that, it must be that you leave it on its chazaka. Yeah? Says, how do you know that you leave it on chazaka? Maybe you were watching it as you're walking out. You did the way the way they mop the floor. They go backwards at the last. They do Oyster Shalom at the last, so they get out. Otherwise, they lock themselves in. They have to wait in the corner until it dries. So maybe as he's walking out of the house, his eyes are on the tzaras, and he's closing the door. As he's closing it, he's still watching the tzaras on the other wall. How do you know that you leave it on its assumed status based on tzaras? That when you close the door, how do you know what happened? So maybe he was really watching it. And then you lose your whole source for chazaka. Gemara says, Amalei Abaya says to Ravacha Bar Yaakov, Shtei Tshuvas B'davar. I have two answers to tell you that will disprove your. Ravacha Bar Yaakov was disproving. I have two reasons to disprove your disproof. One of them is chada the yitzia derech acher of leishmi yitzia. That's not considered leaving when you walk backwards. Walking backwards isn't considered. It says he said exit. Walking backwards isn't considered exiting. What about what's exactly behind the door? And that's where everyone hides when they want to hide. They open the door, they're right behind the door. So maybe the spot of tzaras is right behind the door, so it's impossible to see it. If it's on the far wall, so you can close and close, you close it exactly then. But let's say it's right behind the door. So the chitema pasach be kavasei. You know what we'll do? We'll make a little peephole, not going in, not going looking out, but looking in. It makes a little window in the door, and so that when he's closing the door, he could look through to see that the terrace is there. Yeah. But Tanan, if you're going to say that that's the pshat over here, and then we don't have any proof for chazaka, but Tanan, bayasafal ain't paisam bechalenis. There's this nigga says you can't do that. It says you don't put any windows in. You don't make in a dark house. It says you don't make any windows, so you can't make any new windows in this house. Amalei Rava. Right.
And it wouldn't be a dark house.
Right. But it means that you don't make windows to be able to see the tzaras. Because if you can't see the tzaras because it's dark, you don't make holes in it.
It's a metaphor.
It's not a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It's literal. You don't make a new window. You can't see it. Let me just say, okay, you can't see it.
You know, I don't remember if you told us the story or I heard somewhere else, but after the Inquisition, when many Jews were in Latin America or South America, we're going back to late 14th or 15th, that in hiding their Judaism, that if they had certain things, they would put it behind the front door.
Right.
So if the guy, let's say the Grand Inquisitor equivalent came in, he'd open the door, he'd look around, see no Jewish stuff.
Right.
And then when he left, he closed the door and not see what was behind the door.
Right.
But I remember learning that. Yes, you told it.
In the Reb Mendel story.
Yeah, the pockets.
The pockets. They would play cards in the prison.
Pockets.
So the guard would come in, would look through the window, see them playing cards. He'd open the door,
put it in
and they would put it in the guard's pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but they did have this thing that a lot of the like the South American people would say from Spanish descent. They say that their grandmother would always tell them, sweep the floor not to the doorway but to the middle of the room. You ever hear this? Because the doorway has a mezuzah. You don't sweep the dirt to the mezuzah. Right? Yeah, you're familiar with that.
That's covered.
So okay, but Tanan, you don't do that. You can't make a window. Okay, so now he seems to have a proof. That you have to assume that the tzara stayed the same, and that's why you're closing it up. Amalei Rava says the ka'amrit yitzia derech acher v'leishmi yitzia. Rava says to Abaye, this that you claimed that you can't walk backwards. That's not considered exiting. He says that's not a problem because kan gadol b'yom kippurim yechiach t'ksev beyitzia l'tanan yatsa balei derech knisasei. How does the kain gadol walk out of the kodesh hakadashim? It says v'yatsa, and he walks out backwards. He walks out the way he came in. You're telling me that exiting can't be done backwards. That's not true. The ka'amrit by yourself there's this nigay, and then you told me that you can't make a window in the house of tzaras. You're just going to have to say that it's star because we don't make windows. If you can't see it, you can't see it. So therefore, we can't make a window in the door. He says that's not. You're not saying it accurately. Hani mili hechad le'eschazik. Le'eschazik is chazik. That's before you decided if there's tzaras there and the house is dark and you can't see it. We don't tell you to light a candle or to make a window. We don't do that. You say you can't see it. You can't see it. It's not tzaras. You go free. Once you know that there's tzaras, and you want to watch it as you're leaving their house, make sure it's still there. Maybe you're allowed to make a window in the doorway, in the door. You should be able to look in, and while as you're closing the door to see that it still stayed the same size. You have no raya for that you go after chazaka. Maybe you're watching it. Tanya Delaker Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. You have a brisa that's different than Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says that maybe you're walking backwards and you're watching it. It says, Yatza Kayin Min Abayas. Kayin leaves the house by Tzaras. Yachal Yeilech L'teich Beisei V'yaske. Maybe it means that he's supposed to go inside and close the door. Tamalemer Al Pesach Abayas. It says he goes to the doorway. Maybe you should stand under the lintel and close the door. He has to go out. The exit entirely. He stands next to the lintel and he closes it. If he went inside the house and closed it, or if he stood inside the house and he closed it, that it's considered closed. So which part of this contradicts Rav Acha Bar Yaakov? Oh, it's not. It's not talking about walking into the house. It's going to his own house. You see, the Brisa clearly says that he leaves the entire area and he closes it. It's still considered a hesker. He goes. Not only does he leave the house, but he goes to his own house, and then he says, back at home, he says that he's closing off the house for 7 days. That other house that he was down the block. So, which means that he's not watching it the whole time, like Rav Acha Bar Yaakov wanted him to do. Maybe it could be it shrunk already, the tzaras, by the time you get. So it's a raya against Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, and it must be that we're relying on chazaka, that it stayed the same that it was when he saw it before. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, what did Rav Acha Bar Yaakov say about that? In the kaime dara the gavre v'amar k'dekai kai. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, the only way he would be able to explain this would be he would say that there's a line of people, what's it called, production line, and assembly line, and each one is telling him what he sees at the house of Tzaras, passing the message. It's still there. It's still there. It's still there. It's still there. And then the Kohen back in his house is saying, "Okay, so it's closed up."
Really,
Far-fetched.
it's supposed to be totally on the coin. That's why the coin says empty out the whole house. He goes to all these things to make, to the benefit of the house owner. And that would be not to. Before I even come in, to get rid of everything in the house. It's that, because if I tell you that it's no good.
Yeah, Tosfos mentions, he says that you don't even really need the kohen you don't even need the assembly line. You only need one person standing there that's going to tell you later that when you said Hesker, that the tzaras was still there. It says, but the Gemara is elaborating so that the kohen should know about it. But really, you would just need one person to say that what the kohen did was accurate because he was watching it.
That's interesting times to live back.
Now we have also a very general question. How do we know what the sages told us that you always follow majority? Where it says Minalan. You want to know you're even asking that question? This is how they answer a question. What are you asking that question for? The Achirab Lahates. It says Achirab Lahates. It says that you follow you lean after the majority. It says Ruba Disa come on, can Teschanese for Sanhedrin like a Mibaili. You can Mibaili Ruba the Lessa come on, can cut Naktan. He says, when I have a majority in front of me, for example, I find a piece of meat in front of 10 stores, 9 of them are kosher. Say it came from the majority. Or if I have a Sanhedrin, I have, 35 and 36, or 12 and 13. You have what's the Sanhedrin? 23. What was it? 23. Should be 11 and 12, right? So it's 11 and 12. So over there, I have exactly the number that tells me the majority. Then I know I follow the majority because it says in the pasuk. My question is, Ruba de Lessa, come on. Let's say I have just a statistic. Do I follow statistics? Which is, for example, Gain Katan Ktana, Minalan. How do you know that you follow statistics? We have a machlekes about if there's a girl that her husband passed away, and her husband had a brother. The brother's a child as well, Katan. Can they do yibam? So the brother, the child, the brother needs to upkeep the name of his deceased brother. If he can have children, then that's fine. Then it's a mitzvah. If he can't have children, then it's an avera. He's not allowed to marry his sister-in-law. So we're going to have to wait until he gets older to know if he's a saris, if he's a eunuch, or if he's able to have children. So Reb Meir holds that they can't do it, that they can't get married until they get older. And the Chacham say no, they can. Why? Because you follow a majority. Now, which majority are you following? Well, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, well, which majority? Where's that majority? It's not a majority. It's just a statistic. The majority is not right here.
On the male or based on the female?
So it's both. It's both. Both. So where do you know that you can follow a majority that you don't even have numbers? Right? From Rabbi Lazar, Simen, Zman, Shvach, Machnash. Let's see. Asya, let's see, I'm not sure where this comes from, what the Simen is. This Gemara actually sometimes explains the Simen. This the names of the Amirayim. Okay. Oh, I guess the first one is Elazar. They took a Zion from Elazar, so that's the Zion of Zman. It says Asya Miresha Shel Oila. We get it from the head of the Oila. It says when you bring an Oila, you cut it into pieces. But you can't cut the pieces into pieces. How do you know the animal's kosher? Maybe the meninges inside the brain have a hole in it, which that would mean that the animal is a treifa. And you can't cut the head in half, because it says you can only cut it into pieces. You can't cut the pieces into pieces. So you can't open the head. So how do you know? Allah mishum damrina and basaruba. Must be we follow a majority. See, this is not a chazak. We have no knowledge of what took place before. Just know that majority is fine. Mimai. How do you know that that's how we do it? Dilma de polile ubadakle. What does poly mean? That they split it and they open it, but they don't cut it in half. And maybe they have to check it like that. And maybe because you're telling me that you're not allowed to do that, because you're not allowed to cut the pieces into pieces. That's only if you would actually split it. But over here, where it's still attached, there's no problem. They made it like a hinge. They open up the back of the skull, and they open it up, and they see if the meninges are intact. Okay. The next one is Mar Breder Avina. Okay, let's leave it over here. We're looking for sources for Rive, that you follow majority. Have a good day, everyone.
Come by, kids.